All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Working Class Fishing Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Brian. Got John Morris here, and we are very privileged today to have an esteemed member of the fly fishing community and somebody that works for a manufacturer that John and I revere and hold in high regard. Not only for the affordability of their fly fishing equipment, but also for their customer service, their warranties, the price points, everything. Steve Densley works for Maxxon Outfitters, and Maxxon Outfitters is based out of Kent, Washington. They've been in the business since 2015, and they have a small group of people that work up there. Some of the best customer service I've ever had in fly fishing, and so we're really privileged to have Steve on here with us today to talk a little bit about Maxxon, talk about the products, talk about the accessibility and what Maxxon stands for. And maybe he'll even give us some sneak previews on some new products and everything else coming down the road. So Steve, thank you so much for being on here. We so appreciate this.
Thank you.
We've been so excited since I told John. I was like, hey, Steve got back in touch with me. He emailed like right away, and we're like, yeah, this is really exciting for both of us.
Well, I appreciate you guys and giving us the opportunity to kind of spread the word. As we've kind of chatted before, we're a small company. We've got a very limited advertising budget, so we're kind of relying on word of mouth and customer service and just spreading the love for us. That's what we're trying to do. So it's an honor to be with you guys.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this is good.
No, this is awesome. And how I came into contact with Maxxon was I went to the Pacific Northwest Sportsman Show back in 2018, and I had already owned some fly combos and things like that, but I never owned anything that was like really high end, and I wanted to get something that was better. And I was starting to look at doing some saltwater fishing with the fly and everything else, and I still haven't got that direction yet. But I ran into one of your sales guys. I believe it was Brian that was there. And I went around to all the booths, and I won't name those brands because we're here to talk about Maxxon, but I went to the different booths and I saw all these, 9 and 10 foot rods, and they were, price tags $500, $800, $1,000 just for the rod itself, not even the reel. And then I come around to the Maxxon booth, and I'm like, hey, what do you guys got? And I believe he pulled out a Passage 4-weight, and he showed me the Passage, and he was like, yeah, this is a $199 combo. I was like, well, is that just for the rod? And he's like, no, rod, reel, case, everything else. Oh, by the way, if you go over to this retailer, they actually paid more for it than what they're selling it for. So you could go over there and get it cheaper than you could from us. So you might want to just sneak over there and get one. And I was like,
yeah,
why are you telling me this? And he was like, well, we want you guys to have this rod. So and that's my experience. And so I've been diehard with Maxxon ever since, especially on heavy game rods and everything else. So that's been my experience.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah. So, I mean, starting in 2015, doing all this stuff, you talked about actually being able to get a hold of this equipment and cast it and do that kind of stuff. What's a little bit of your background with the fishing and the fly fishing and the fishing industry and everything else that got you to that point of Maxxon?
Well, I've been in the industry or the business fly fishing since about 1983, I think it was. I got involved in retail. My father-in-law owned a chain of stores, 4 stores total, family business, and that's how I got in, because he took pity on me. So I got to learn the retail end of fishing, and it was everything fishing. We did fly fishing and all kinds of stuff. So that was really my education, and I had the opportunity to learn really from some of the best fishermen, and especially fly fishing. Guys that are still my heroes. I learned so much from, and I just had that opportunity to learn from some of the very best, and that's kind of what led me into 16 years of retail. I had a couple of different jobs in retail and management. Then I went to work for the Cortland Line Company as as a regional manager, and I rep for Cortland for 14 years as an employee, as a factory rep, and then went back and as an independent and picked up other lines. And unbeknownst to me, a lot of the Cortland product that I sold was manufactured by the parent company of Maxxon, Evergoing Products. And so even though the brand is only 5 years old, the experience in building fly tackle, they've got about 30 years doing it. So they know what's going on. And I was approached at a show, at an ICAST show years ago, probably about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, because it took them to put things in order. And asked if I'd be interested in coming on board. They want to launch it under their own brand. And I said, yeah, because as a rep, as you're out there representing a product or a company, the way it works is that they say, here's my stuff, here's my rods, here's our reels, go sell it.
Mhm.
Here's the pricing, here's the program, here's the warranties, now go sell it. I get to these guys and they said, what do you want to sell? And I said, what do you mean? I want to sell fly tackle. What fly tackle? Well, I want fly rods. What kind of fly rods? What do you want? And we'll build it. We'll build it for you. You tell me what you want, that build it. So it's like, really? Yeah. So, Justin Cameron is our primary designer and our chief guru. They brought Justin in a matter of just a few months. He laid out the entire beginning line in no time, worked his butt off. I don't know how he did it so quick, but they put the line together and they had a meeting of about 6 of us that they brought from different parts of the country, and they laid it out and presented it and said, here's the product, look it over, what do you think? And after seeing it and casting the rods, playing with the reels, putting it all through the trials, I said, I can sell this stuff easy. I mean, how can you not? And with branding, with especially in fly gear, so much of the sales and the popularity of an item is in the brand that it's built. A lot of guys will buy something because the brand, because they hear it. I don't care if it's Nike or if it's Adidas or Ford or Chevy or whatever. They'll buy because of the brand. And that's especially even more so in fly fishing. But if we can get people to take a minute and actually look, just like you guys did, look at it, compare it, touch it, feel it, cast it, you go, this is a great rod. And then you look at the price and you go, that's not what I was expecting. I was expecting something at least twice that amount, because that's what it's going to take to be comparable in our quality and our material. And so I said, yeah, I can sell this. And sure enough, it's taken some time. But since then, we've added products to the line, and we've had a game plan. We've had a business plan on how we're adding products and what products we add. And so much of it has come from just feedback from guys like you, guys in Pennsylvania. You mentioned Pennsylvania. We've been back to the show there in Lancaster a couple of times. And that's what we've done. We've attended these local shows and talked to the people and said, what do you want? Just like the owner of Maxxon said to me, what do you want to sell? That's what we ask guys. What do you want to fish with? And some of them said, oh, we need a nymphing rod. So we came out with a 10.5 foot 3-weight nymphing rod. And it's a great little stick. It's not the nymphing rod for everybody, but it covers most of the need, and it's a price and a feel, and it works. So that's kind of what we do. We're asking constantly, what do you need? What do you want? And, where is it that, you just refuse to go price wise, because some of this stuff is just priced itself out of the market totally for me, not for other guys. But I mean, I've found that I don't need $1,000 rod to catch a fish.
Yeah.
And being a rep, I was always, when I was in the retail, I was more brand name oriented, because I felt at that time, I was a lot younger then, I was a lot more insecure. I felt, my reputation and my word as a salesman and experience, I had to have experience with this high-end stuff, which you'd get a few of. And, I found that it's nice. It's like a car, I kind of come up with an analogy with a car. You can get in a car, and a Mercedes or a BMW or a Volvo or whatever. Well, I'll get you to 7-Eleven to get your drink and back, right? But the ride's a little different. That's kind of how rods are. You can get some that'll all serve its purpose, but some are a little smoother than others, and some maybe a little lighter, feels better, but it's in the feel basically. But when you can put something in your hands and say, this has got a good feel, it does everything that this rod will do. Maybe it's just not quite the feel, but it's much cheaper in price. That's the guys we're trying to satisfy. We want the guy that wants to get his kid into it.
Right.
Because one of the things I've seen over the years is that we're losing. There's a lot of fishermen out there, but we've lost a lot of the sportsmanship, a lot of the etiquette that goes into it that makes it enjoyable for everybody. And so, hopefully we can help, along with supplying goods and stuff, is to help, help the sportsmanship, the etiquette, educate people on conservation, on what it takes to preserve these fisheries so that we have fishing for generations, not just ourselves. So that's kind of, that's kind of what our deal is.
Absolutely. So I don't know if you got a question for him, John, because I got a whole stack of questions.
So
Shoot.
I'm just making sure I'm still here. You said my internet was unstable. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, John.
It really is, Brian said it's a pleasure having you, but to get away from Maxxon a little bit more to you, if you had to say, I'm just curious, as an angler and someone that's been in the industry for so long, what's your favorite fish? What's your target species to go after?
I love it all. I being in the business has afforded me some really great trips, that I didn't have to pay for myself. So, I've been able to fish in all over different areas of the world. I've been able to Atlantic salmon fish, in Scotland. I've been able to fish Canada, Alaska. I've been able to fish the Keys for tarpon, and just all these different things. But it's interesting you say that, because I'll tell you, really, my honest favorite is fishing some of my little local streams here in Utah. Where more than likely what I'm going to catch is about a 10-inch brown, little wild brown, but 10 to 12 inches, on a little 4-weight dry fly rod. You can't wipe the smile off my face. It doesn't, it doesn't get any better than that. It's all different experiences. I remember when I first went for my first tarpon trip, and I was fishing with Captain Frank Catino, and Frank is still with Cortland. He's been the Cortland National Sales Manager, expert guide, great guide. Man, the guy's he's one of my heroes. And he gets us out there, and I'm a good caster. I've prided myself, and I've had to learn. And that was one of the things that I felt was important for me being in the business, that when I got out there to cast, I better learn how to cast. You can't sell a fly rod to a customer that owns a fly shop and not be able to cast, or else you have no credibility, right? So, I've always really, that's something I still work on consistently. But I got out there with him, and we're fishing and going back and forth, and we're looking for fish. And finally he says, we're going to try a different spot. He says, just throw your line out, reel it, put it on the reel, and we're going to move. And I said, all right. So I made a couple of quick back casts and shot the line out there and start reeling. He goes, that's a great cast. And I said, well, of course it is. It was me. He says, that's not how you're casting. And I says, what do you mean that's not how I'm casting? He says, you're all over the place, dude. He says, your loops look like crap. He says, he says, I was worried. He says, can you cast like that all the time? And I says, I thought I was. And he says, no, you weren't. And I realized that, when he's spotting fish and telling me where to cast, for the first time in my life, I really had like buck fever for fish. My heart was racing. So, I was so excited, fishing for these big, huge fish. And I remember I'm coming from a place where I'm excited over a 10-inch brown, right?
Mhm.
So I start seeing these big, huge tarpon out there. And I guess, so, I slowed down, paid a little more attention, and then I was casting a little better after that. But I didn't realize how fast my casting could go into the toilet just because I was so excited. So, it's all good, but, I really, anything, any fly fishing is good. I don't care if it's even for bluegill, little trout, the bonefish, the tarpon, all that. It's all good. It's
Mhm.
different. It's all different, and you never get enough of it. I've never mastered any of it, but I love it all. So, but I would say that's my favorite. Really, it's just the little mountain streams, and it's just as much of anything. It's just being there.
Mhm.
Smelling the air. I was out fishing this last week with a buddy of mine, and I says, it feels so good just to breathe pine air, the mountain air. It's a little thin, but you can smell the pines and the water, and it's just part of the experience. But I get as much excitement out as watching. Like if we were out fishing and I see a guy throwing a nice line and fishing, I'll sit back and watch him because I enjoy watching other people fish. The nice thing about fly fishing is that, what I like and what's good for me is not necessarily what you might like. Now, what I mean by that is, I know some guys that are the competition, Team USA fly fishing guys,
Mhm.
great fishermen. Man, they can catch fish. They've learned the competition rules, the Euro nymphing,
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff where they can put fish in the net, boom, 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 boom. That's cool, and they're good at it. But that's the last thing I want to do.
Right.
To me, it's not a matter of how many fish can I put into the net, how quickly. I get out there. It's smelling the air, it's the water, it's the sounds, it's the environment, and just slowing down and absorbing it all. And I expect to catch fish, but I don't have to catch a lot of them, and I don't need to do it all day long.
Mhm.
I'm a little older now. I don't have the stamina to go out there and pound it for 10 hours like I used to. If I fish for 3 or 4 hours, 5 hours, I'm done for the day. I'm spent.
Nothing
It's like
wrong with that.
that's you know,
Yeah.
and it's just yeah, because that's for me. That
Yeah.
works for me. So that's the beauty of fly fishing, and that's the thing that I try to convey to everybody is that you can get out of it what you want, and you can get into it as heavily as you want to. Um, if you're into fly tying, I don't know if you guys. Let me show you my little mess. I'm here at my desk,
Yeah.
but right
Show us
over
everything.
my shoulder, there's my
Nice.
fly tying setup. So when I get sick of staring at a computer screen and I need a break, I pop over to the other chair and I'll whip out a fly or two. Um,
That's so cool.
entomology. You can get down to the basics of bugs, or you can become a PhD in entomology if you want
Yeah.
to. It's just there's just so much to it that one lifetime is never enough.
No.
No.
But it's you get out of it what you want out of it, and that's the beauty of it. It's not one size does not fit all.
Yeah. I
That-
think. Oh, go ahead, John.
No, that's awesome. Yeah. I tie and Brian makes some tackle and stuff too. So I know exactly what sometimes just getting behind the vise is just that 15, 20 minutes to just get away from everything,
Yeah.
kind of recenter.
Right.
Like that's why I was actually kind of late getting on here, is because I was
Flipping
tying
up some
flies.
bugs.
I was tying flies
All
with one of our buddies from northern California.
Oh, that's cool.
So,
Well, that's what's so great about this. And so, being in my position where this has been, my sport, my hobby, plus my business, I've had the opportunity to really learn really from some of the best in the world. I think, guys that I admire and who have saved me a lot of time of trial and error. And you know, I try to pay that forward as much as I can. You know, I mean, I'm not a great at anything. You know, I'm not a great tire, but I'm okay. They'll catch fish. I'm a good caster, but I'm not a super great caster. But you know, I understand the mechanics, I understand the physics, I understand the product, the gear. So you know, I can help, whether it's designing items, or you know, selling it, or teaching. You know, I have friends that you know, my son has friends, and he'll say, hey, my buddy wants an outfit, can you get one for him? Yeah, I'll get it for him. Can you give him some casting lessons? And so yeah, you know, I'll do that.
That's cool.
And it's just, you know, an opportunity to, well, you know, a lot of guys have taken their time with me, you know,
Yeah.
and have straightened me out so many times that I feel like, you know, I owe it, you know. I need to pay it back when I can, pay it forward if I can. So I try to do that as much as I can. So, you know, it's just a neat thing, you know. Fly
That's
fishing
super
is
cool.
something you can do with a group of people or by yourself. You know, sometimes just being by yourself for half an afternoon is the best therapy in the world.
Absolutely. Well, and you know, that I think that touches on another factor is the accessibility points of fly fishing. I think there's a common misperception, and John and I talk about this a lot. And that common misperception is that you have to be, you know, a certain, you know, person in a certain place with a certain group of people in order to fly fish. And John and I both know that's not true at all. Yeah, because when we get
Right.
our, you know, when we
That's
get our
true.
butt kicked out on the river and don't catch any trout, we'll still go down to the pond and go catch bluegill just to make ourselves feel better. And we'll do it on the fly rod. You know, everybody else is throwing bait out there and everything else. And
Yeah.
we're out there, they're like, what are you doing? It's bang, bang. And we're blowing up, you know, bluegill or warmouth or pumpkin seed or whatever, you know, whatever you want to call it, panfish. We'll go out there and fish for those on the fly rod. And I see so many other opportunities for like younger people to get into fly fishing at that point, just like what you were saying, like, hey, get my kid
Right.
a rod and then maybe some casting lessons. I think that's just that's right there at the heart and soul of preserving the activity, you know, the sportsmanship and conservation. So
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
super cool to me. It makes me happy to hear somebody from a manufacturer actually saying that, because more times than not, you know, and you have experience in retail fishing. I had a very short stint working at a retail sporting goods store. I'll always go back to that. I did it like as a little part-time thing while work was slow.
Uh-huh.
And I saw time and time again where folks would come in and they would say, hey, what do I need? And it's like, oh, you know, the kids would be like, you need to get this rod, this reel, all this other stuff. And they'd leave there and they'd end up bringing it up on their credit card because they didn't have enough cash, when all they needed was maybe $30-$40 worth of stuff to go out and have a good time.
Right.
You know, that's kind of that whole thing. So, you know, not to sidetrack off too far, but Maxxon in general, who are you seeing as your main customers? Who's calling Brian and Justin and yourself and some of the other folks? Who are you running into at the sportsman shows or on the phone or via email? What is that group of folks look like just in general?
You know, it's hard to quantify that into a certain group, because we're seeing, I would say, more younger guys. Now, younger guys to me, okay, guys that I would say anywhere from the teenage years to
Good.
40, you know.
Okay.
Um,
I guess I was
a 40
thinking,
year old is a young guy to me. So
I guess I was kind of thinking, you know, would it be more so like, are you getting a lot more novices and beginners, or are you getting kind of a mix of novice, beginner, and more advanced anglers?
yes, both, and that's the beauty of it, because you know, we're getting the new guys, because they say, hey, we have these outfits. You mentioned the Passage. The Passage is a little 8-foot 6-piece 4-weight that's great for little dry fly, you know, backpacking, hiking type of stuff. But our number one outfit is what we call a stone fly, and we have four rods in that. We have an 8.5, 4, a 5, a 6, and an 8 weight. And
Yeah.
that is our number one package because it sells for under $200, totally rigged, rod, reel, line, backing, leader, case. It's good quality. It's a good rod. It's a good reel. It's a disc drag reel.
Yeah.
Because I can't piece that together for that price. If you buy into everything individually, it totals, $40 more than buying it as an outfit. So, that's really popular. But the other thing we're seeing are guys that are experienced fishermen. And I even see this with my own friends because, I've got my friends have a tendency to have been a little on the snobby side. These are guys that fish only the expensive Sage, Winston, Scott's type of thing. And yet they see me out there fishing Maxxon, right? And so what's that rod you got? Hey, I don't have a 7. You got something in the set? Sure. So they start buying stuff from me and getting it, and they're going, that rod, that's a good rod. I says, yeah, I know. I've got a guy, he's a good friend of mine. He's a retired coach from the NFL. And all he does, he rents his house out in Idaho. He's up there in the ski where is it? Where the skiing is in Idaho. I don't even know what it's called, but he rents his house out in the wintertime for skiers, and he goes to New Zealand for 3 months. And then he comes back and he fishes all over the place. And he's a good fisherman, and he's a wild firecracker. But he asked me if can I get a couple of outfits, those stoneflies from you? And I said, yeah. I said, what for? He says, I've always got these guys that you don't fly fish and they want to use my stuff, and I don't want to give them my $1,000 rods because they'll break them. So I want to give them something that if I break, I'm not going to cry over. And I said, yeah, okay. So I got him our stuff, right? So he hits me up the other day and he says, hey, that stonefly outfit? And I said, yeah. He says, that's really a good outfit. And I says, I know. He says, no, it's really a good outfit. I says, I told you it was. He says, I know, but I didn't expect it to be that good for under $200.
Yeah.
He says, my outfit, he says, is a $1,500 outfit. He says, and this was every bit as good as that. And I said, well, I says, not really. And I said, but I said, for what you're doing, he says, hey, he says, I'll fish these any day of the week. So, once these guys get past the name brand thing, and they actually get out there and they're doing it and they say, God, this thing casts well, it feels good, it hooks fish, it's not a detriment to my fishing success, then they get past the no name, lack of brand recognition,
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting in that respect that you don't have to spend the big money to get something good. And I'll tell you, that's changed over the last number of years because, I remember back when graphite rods were really just coming onto the scene, and especially the high modulus graphite rods, because, that's all when the aerospace industry was doing all this shuttle work and rocket work, and they were coming out with all these new graphites, and they were coming up with all these new resins and things that you had your graphite 1, your graphite 2, your IM6, your IM7, your graphite 3s, your graphite 4s, all these different generations of graphite. And we haven't had that for a number of years. So we're using the same materials that we were using 20 years ago. We haven't really had anything new to speak of. So, they've had to rely on taper profiles and little things here, cosmetics, but, the rods, the material wise hasn't changed much. And we're finding that the less expensive stuff has had an opportunity to catch up to the more expensive stuff. The price of graphite didn't. The high modulus graphite is more expensive, but not that much more expensive as what it used to be. So it's enabled for lower priced non-brand stuff to get better in quality without having to pay for the advertising dollars. If Maxxon ever puts me in a Range Rover or something like that and lets me drive around in it, then we'll know the advertising budget was increased. But
Yeah.
as it is, that hasn't happened. So
Man. Yeah, I was just
Steve,
taking a peek here
uh,
at the combos, but go ahead, John, because I'll get back to the combo thing.
Yeah, Steve, I gotta tell you, man, Brian found Maxxon through one of the shows, and I actually was introduced to it through Brian, and I had my first run in with. This isn't just a fish story because I'm terrible at them, but I had my first legitimate run in with a possible state record yesterday.
wow.
And the rod handled it exceptionally. What actually gave was my leader. The rod didn't give, my fly line didn't give, it was my bad knot.
Oh
So,
no.
So I've got to say,
what were you fishing for? What were you?
long nose gar. So
Okay.
I'm in pursuit of the long nose gar Texas state record.
Wow.
And I had it. It was, like no joke. I know it was 3 feet exactly because that's where my knot was, because I've been tying to the IGFA standard, and I knew exactly that was 3 feet. And I had my line pulled all the way up in the rod. The rod was loaded just perfectly, wasn't overloaded. And I was white knuckle gripping my fly line because I was about to go down and land it. I thought my heart was going to beat out of my chest.
Oh no.
And it wasn't done fighting, and it went back down. I saw the whole fish laid out, and it went to go back down, and I'm looking straight down my eyes of my rod. And I'm like,
and did the line break? Did it break, or the knot come undone?
The knot gave.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That hurts.
But the rod, that was the first. I got this rod as a gift from my dad because I had previously broken 2 8-weights fishing for gar.
Wow.
and
this is the 10.
This is the 10. And I throw 8 and 10-inch really heavy streamers for these guys, and it casts phenomenally. I mean, you got to put a little MAN on it sometimes, but it'll put it out there.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, for trout fishermen that are used to throwing 4, 5s, and 6 weight rods, you start even a 10 to me is a lot of work, but you can cast it. But you go from a 10 to a 12, and then it's like, man, these things suck casting. I have yet to find a 12 weight that casts decent. They're all just. But at that point, for a 12 weight, all you're doing is looking for something that's massive to fight the fish once it's hooked. If you can cast it, even a good cast is going to be marginal. But you go from a 12 to a 10, you go, oh, this is awesome. You go to a 5 weight, you go, what's this? No, nothing exists here. But that's awesome. I'm just glad you didn't tell me it was Maxxon leader that broke.
No.
Your rods are good, but your Maxxon leader broke on my state record.
I'm not gonna lie. One of my concerns was the reel seat at first. I was concerned with the reel seat. I was like, will this hold? And it did.
Yeah.
It held fine. It held beautifully. In fact,
that's good to hear, because the thing is in manufacturing, there are things that happen, and sometimes not enough glue is used, or somebody screws up and the quality control doesn't catch it at the end there. And so some of that happens, and there can be a flaw in materials or a nick in a rod or something that's not caught. But through our research and everything, the chances of a rod breaking just due to a manufacturer's defect or flaw in the material is probably about 2%. 2 rods out of 100 will break regardless. Most of the other breaks, all on top of that, are due to the loose nut at the end of the handle. In other words, it's user error. A lot of times we'll get guys that say, hey, I just pulled it out and was just casting it, nothing on it, and it broke. And you'll say, well, do you ever fish bead heads? Do you ever fish split shot on your leaders? Oh yeah, all the time. Have you ever thumped the rod with your bead head? Oh yeah, all the time. Well, with graphite rods, you can bruise it, and then just the continuing flexing where you've bruised it, eventually it's going to break, or there's a good chance it's going to break. And that's when it happens, when you're least expensive or expected, because that rod might have been bruised weeks before and it finally just broke. But usually breakage due to a flaw in the material or error in manufacturing or something is right around 2%. Everything above that is usually user error. So one thing with us is that we've asked people, please tell us how the rod broke, especially because we were coming out with these new lines of rods, and it was important for us to understand if we had a flaw in our manufacturing. If we saw a break that was continuous in one area, then obviously we had a problem in manufacturing somewhere. But when we say, look, we're going to cover it, you're getting a new rod regardless, but send us pictures, tell us honestly how it broke. The stories we hear, it's great. It's kind of like everything from the dog that I told you about. Guys, like the car door caught it. Oh, the power window caught it. I stepped on it. Oh, I didn't. It's like, to us, it's like, oh, good, because we would much rather replace a rod because a guy stepped on it than going, oh, we got to go back and look at a flaw in, are we cutting the graph or the pre-peg wrong, or are we doing something in the manufacturing that's are the feet getting filed down too much to where it's cutting into the blank after it flexes, So, I think what we're seeing overall is about a 5% breakage. 2% of that is actual flaws in the thing, and about 3% is user error. So, it's good for us to see more users breaking it than, flaws in the materials, but that can happen with anything,
Sure.
So I don't know, but it's good to hear that that it did the job for you, though. That's good. That's music to our ears.
Yeah, I was not surprised because it
Get pictures when you get that state record. Get pictures and send them to
I will.
us, so that
I most definitely
use them
will.
on our. I would love to post that on our social media. The Maxxon rods with state records. That's awesome. That'd be great.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I expect it to happen now. You know where the fish is, right?
Yeah.
You know where he's at. Hey, take no prisoners.
Well, yeah, John's been working really hard at getting at that, and that's one of his things is he's going to continue to pursue that. I don't think I can get any state records around here on a fly. Maybe I'm starting small and working my way up, but when I do, I'll put those pictures up too.
I'll never have a state record of anything, so that's okay though.
Yeah,
I'm too lazy to go work that hard.
I hear you on that one. It's like kind of chasing the golden goose egg. Fortunately,
it's like, that's those. There's a lot better fishermen out there that I'll never touch. So I give.
Yeah. So in addition to rods, you guys make reels also, and you have a really good selection of reels. And so we looked at the combos. I'm looking at the reels. That's why I keep looking down. So I have your website pulled up over here on my phone, and I'm looking at the reels. I have a Talon, which is the one that I use on my 10 weight. I love that reel. It's a great reel. But you have all of these different types of reels and stuff. Are the reels manufactured by the same folks Evergoing? Do they do the reel manufacturing as well?
We have it done in different factories. They're actually all our reels, with the exception of the Talon. The Talon is a Korean reel. The SDX, the SDP, and the MAX, those are all Chinese. They're done in China. They're done in a different town. So they're coming from a different factory. Mm-hmm. But all three of those reels are reels that Justin and I worked on together to design and to add to our existing collection. And the thing about those reels is that, you know, when we look at something to add to our our lineup, you know, we want to see the price point where it's going to fit, and we want to be aware of what the competition has out there for that price point, and then what would set ours apart. And there's many times we've had a lot of projects that are on the drawing board, and we get into them and we find out that you know, we can't do anything with it because we really won't have anything to offer any better than what's out there at a better price. And so we'd say, what's the point? You know, we're just go out there and bang our heads against something. But like on these reels, for example, what we did is that all three of those are machined reels.
Mhm.
Now your Talon is an aluminum die cast with secondary machining.
Yeah.
But all these others are cut from bar stock aluminum, right?
Mhm.
So the beauty of a bar stock aluminum is that it's stronger. You drop it, you know, it won't ever break. You might dent it, but you know, you can usually buff it out, straighten it. And then the drag systems and the things we put on it. All three of our machined reels run on ball bearings. Each one of them have 2 ball bearings and a one-way roller bearing clutch. So there's 3 bearings in every one of those reels. Our SDX and the SDP are sealed drag systems.
Yep.
So that it's got a much heavier drag mechanism. We use 2 friction discs on those. We non-asbestos, which is a non-trademarked Teflon.
Mhm.
So there's 2 friction discs sandwiched between stainless steel discs.
Okay.
So that no matter what happens with that reel, if you submerge it or whatever, it's all sealed. So there's nothing to interfere with the usage, slipping or expanding or contracting of those discs that will affect the drag. So the drag is a beast, and you can't burn them up. You know, there's a lot of opinion on materials. And, you know, what I've always done is said, you know, like a lot of guys like the old cork drags, the old style. And cork is great as long as it's fairly new. But once you've used it, once it's compressed, you lose a lot of that range. And that's why I like the carbon fiber stuff, is because it doesn't expand, it doesn't contract, it stays the same. It can get hot, it can be cold, it can get wet, and it doesn't affect it. So our drags are beefy. You can't burn them up. They
Yeah.
run on bearings, so they're smooth. And then thanks to Justin, he made them look pretty. You know, he's got them
Yeah.
looking kind of sexy. The SDX stands for Sealed Drag X Frame.
Yep.
I tell everyone it's the Steve Densley X Frame, but they don't believe me. The SDP actually stands for Sealed Drag Pelagic, because we just needed to come up with another word for, you know, for water. And then we use both of those a lot in saltwater fishing, where you know, you've got to rinse everything so much with salt water, and being sealed, it's a lot less maintenance. So you know, that's what we did with the reels there. We've been working on strictly, the COVID thing really put us back, because we really lost 2 years in product development, because nothing was happening, of course, overseas, and it just shut everything down. But one of the things we have in the works is a big game reel that can be used for 2-handed rods, you know, spey casting type stuff. But the frame is going to be made out of a carbon fiber and aluminum, and so it'll reduce some of the weight, but yet make it an extremely strong, and then have a sealed drag system on it too. So you know, that's something that's in the works, that hopefully we can regenerate that, you know, that project as things get up and running again. But you know, the reels, one thing about our reels, our most expensive reel is $250.
Yeah.
And if you compare that, you know, with the bearings and the discs and the construction and the machining and all that kind of stuff, you know, you're going to compare it to a reel that's $500 to $700. And I've used our reels. I'll tell you what, I've used a lot of nice reels in my time, and I like ours better than anything I've ever had before. So those are exciting for me. And the thing is you say, well, a lot of guys, and I've heard it all, that you don't really need the reel is the least important part. And I disagree with that, because I use my reels. If it's a little dinky fish on like what I usually catch anyway, you don't need a reel. But even then, even if I'm just on a normal sized river, if you've ever had to maybe move 10 feet downstream, or move to an area that's shallower so you can land a fish, or you need to go from faster water to slower water or whatever, if you've got loose line swirling around you, I'm going to step on it. I'm going to get it caught on a rock or on a stick. I'm going to end up with. So I like to get my line picked up, and I like to get them on the reel, and that way, that I can use my rod to absorb the shock. I'm not as good with my fingers, so I'm likely to grab the line, like you mentioned, the death grip on your line. I'm more likely to do something like that and not be able to release the line when I want to. So, this way I can let the rod do its thing. I let the reel do its thing, and I land more fish with less tangles. So it's for me, even Justin tells me, he says, I disagree with you on that on 4-weight. And I said, well, even on a 4-weight, a little rod, I'll put them on the reel. It's just my way of doing it, because I don't like this loose line, or you try to do something and you picked up a stick and a leaf, and
Yeah.
So it's just me, and it's not to say my way is the right way, and it's just whatever blows your skirt up. But I do use my reels, and that being said, the drags we have on these reels is like way overkill. You'll never use a fraction of what these reels will do, because our tippets and our leaders aren't that strong. I remember I've repped Hardy reels for quite a while when I was with Cortland.
I got an old
and I had
reel.
The old one, even the old ones. But Hardy was coming out with some new disc drag stuff when I started repping them, and Andy Murray from Hardy came over to the U.S. and spent a few days with me over in Denver, calling on shops, and they'd just come out with this new reel, beautiful reel. And we took it into a shop, and the guy grabs it, and the first thing he does is tighten the drag down, and then he says, the drag's not tight enough. And Andy says, mate, he says, that's a 5-weight reel. He says, I know, but it won't crank all the way down. He says, mate, you don't want it to crank all the way down. He says, this is a trout reel. He says, you do that. He says, you're busting your line or a rod. He says, it doesn't matter. It has to crank all the way down to sell it. And he says, if you're trying to sell this to somebody that's that dumb, he says, please don't sell him a Hardy. And, he was this guy, that the mentality of a disc, it's like, but it's just different people's perceptions on stuff. And it's like I say, these reels we have, man, they tighten up more and everything than you'll ever possibly ever come close to. But the thing is that when you do tighten them down, a lot of reels, and you might do this when you test a reel out, is I sit back and I turn them backwards on that drag, and I'll feel for the high spot or the sticking spot, because a lot of these drags, the way they're built, there's a bump either in the disc or in the material or the pad or whatever, and it'll turn, and also it'll catch, and it'll turn again and kind of catch, and it can be very slight. And when we did these, I made sure there is no catch. It is just as smooth, no matter how much you tighten it down. It doesn't have that. That to me is a mark of a good, consistent drag. And it's overkill. It really is overkill. But, I guess that's what they want. So that's what we gave them.
Brian, I know you got some stuff, so I'll let you go ahead.
Okay. I didn't know if you
Well,
had.
that's hit me.
Yeah. So Yeah, I was showing John the rod. He was like, "Well, how much power does it have?" And so I have that Talon reel on my rod. So I did exactly what you said. I cranked it down all the way, and I took a piece of 20-pound test fluoro and I tied it off to the main line just on the loop. And I tied it off to the
Uh-huh.
barbecue, and I lifted up on the barbecue with it to show him how much power the rod had. And that brake held the other side of it. It was a little Traeger, but I was like, "Here, look at this." I'm like that. And he was like, "Oh, you're kidding." I was like, "No, here you go." I'm like, my arm's shaking like this, holding it up. I'm like, I think you can yank like a 8-foot alligator gar out. So, or
Yeah.
whatever prehistoric monster you want to go chase after. That brake holds a lot.
Oh, I'm so glad I didn't break on you.
Oh, no. If I would have broke it, it would have been my own
No.
fault. But I just
Oh no, but
it would have been stupid for me to call up Justin or Brian and said, "Yeah, so I was demoing this rod for my friend. I hooked it to a barbecue and I lifted up the other side of it." But
well, it's good to hear that we're standing up to some pretty tough
ridiculous stuff.
testing.
If I
Well,
would have had a cinder block, I would have done that instead.
you gotta,
Yeah.
Sure.
as you know, working class fellows, we get a little resourceful sometimes.
Yeah.
Well,
And,
I'll tell you, it's kind of good to hear this because like I say, unless we hear, we ask how did the rod break type of stuff, and it's always music to our ears to hear that it broke for some other reason other than a flaw in the material or something in production. And so if we were to hear that, we'd laugh, we'd replace the rod anyway.
Yeah.
But at least we go, well, at least it broke on a Traeger. And
Well, like I said, we do some crazy stuff. I can't count the amount of times I've done wild stuff fishing, where people are like, "How did you catch that fish?" It's like, a long story, but this is what I did. And they were like, "How did that even work?" Because John and I, we get stuff from different people that manufacture lures and flies and stuff, and we'll catch some species that
Right.
they never thought that you could catch on that. They're like, "You can catch
Yeah.
that." So we're always doing goofy stuff, or I am anyways. John's probably a little bit more careful, but I'm a little bit more renegade, I guess, when it comes to that kind of thing. So,
well, like I say, it's interesting to hear this because that makes me feel good to know that that our stuff is getting tested to the max and we're
beyond.
Standing up to the test. Yeah, that's good.
If I could have went out to a river and snagged it for him and hauled a log off the bottom for him, that probably would have been a more legitimate test.
Yeah.
But,
that's still good.
So, when somebody's coming up to you at a trade show and like my experience of seeing the Passage as the first rod that I was shown at that trade show, if you were going to recommend one of your combos to somebody just getting started out, and I know this is like probably the big magic question, but which combo would you recommend from Maxxon? Because we're gear guys too. We love the gear, but you being the sales guy, what would you recommend as like a good beginner combo? You have the Timberhawk, the Stonefly, and the Passage. Which one of those three would you recommend?
Yeah, probably for the most all around would be the Timberhawk. And then pick, or not the Timberhawk, I'm sorry, the Stonefly. And I'll tell you why that over the Timberhawk. But I would pick the Stonefly and then pick the line weight for the type of fishing you're doing. Like I say, it comes in a 4, 5, 6, and an 8. So if you're fishing if it's a youth, if it's a young person, I'd put them in the 8.5, 4. If it's an all-around adult trout fishing, I'd go with the 5. If it's more for still water, larger flies, maybe some of the bigger dry flies, I'd go with the 6. If it's for bass, if it's for maybe some of the small steelhead salmon, small saltwater, something like that, then I'd go the 8. Okay. So it kind of gives you a good selection there, depending. But I would go with the Stonefly over the Timberhawk. The Timberhawk outfit is $120, and the Stonefly I think is $190.
Yeah.
And the difference between the two is, number one, the reel. The reel in the Stonefly is the Talon, the same reel you have.
Mhm.
It's an aluminum reel with a disc drag. The reel that comes in the Talon is a graphite reel, and it's a nice little reel. But the problem with graphite is if you drop it, it's going to break much easier. It's a pretty fragile reel. The other thing is that the Stonefly has a higher modulus graphite in its rod than the Timberhawk. It's not a big difference, but there is a little bit of a difference, and the overall weight is less.
Mhm.
The really other thing is the case.
Yeah.
Because most broken rods are a result of no case, and having the case that protects the rod and the reel is well worth the extra money too. So for those reasons, I would go with the Stonefly.
Yeah, it seems like just a rock solid combo, and it's got some great reviews on your website. One right here from July 22nd today. Picked up the combo. I'll read the review right here. Picked up this combo after deciding to get into fly fishing. Don't make the mistake of thinking this is just a starter kit. He said, I'm only a year into fly fishing, but I've used it for trout and a big one at that, and even picked up a couple largemouth and a bullhead catfish on it. Terrific quality. And if you have any questions, the customer service is impeccable. Obviously, we know that as the customers, but that's really cool. I've heard in the past the loudest things that you hear are all the negative, but there isn't a single, like, nobody ever says anything bad about the Maxxon products once they purchase them. They might look at them and say, well, it's just cheap gear, when they walk through like a Sportsman's Warehouse or a Buy Mart or something like that, which is where we have here. They might say, well, it's just the cheap gear, you gotta pass that and go over to Sage or TFO or something, one of those two. But this is incredible. And the fact that you're capable of fishing multi-species and using it in that capacity. So I've been kicking around picking up another combo because I take so many people out, and using one of my older combos to hand me down and get myself a new one. And I love that Talon reel. So that's a good one. But the Stonefly, and we'll feature that also in the show notes. We'll put a link to the website with that in there too. So that's not a problem
Awesome
for us. Yeah. So that way folks can go.
Well, that's good to hear. And the thing is, I get concerned a lot of times when we leave ourselves open like that, because a lot of times I expect somebody from Reddington to go in there and write a review of our Stonefly. You know what I mean? They're going to say, yeah, this is the biggest piece of junk and I hate it and blah, 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 because that can happen, and we know that. But the thing is, just like I said, my buddy Jack, this guy fishes all the high-end expensive stuff, and he tells me, hey, that's really a good outfit. And I said, I know. And he says, no, but it's really good. It's like, guys like this guy, he's experienced, even though he's not got a lot of years, but he can tell the difference between good stuff and bad stuff. And I'll tell you what, most guys can. That's one thing I learned in my retail days, is that back then, it was really tough to put together an outfit for what the price of this is, of that quality, because it didn't exist as at that time. A lot of times you had to spend more money to get a halfway decent rod. And now that's all changed. It's much more accessible, but it's good to hear guys come from them, because I can tell you how good it is, and you say, well, yeah, but you're from Maxxon, we expect that from you. So for us, sometimes third-party credibility will carry so much more credibility than what we have. They expect us to tell you how good it is. So it's good to hear that. But also, you get somebody that gets ticked off or mad or something, and they can do a lot of damage just by posting a bad review. But
Yeah.
that's good. But yeah, you know, that's really what we strive for. And you know, since Justin came out with the first existing line of product, you know, we've added the Aurelius, and that's a high end rod for us. It's a $250 retail. It's made with the highest modulus graphite, the 40 ton. It's a beautiful rod. And we built this to have a little bit softer tip section. It's a fast action rod. It's got a little softer tip
Pretty
to
rough.
protect some of those lighter tippets for trout fishing. So, you know, if you're a guy that says, hey, I want a rod to fish for trout, a 9'5" weight, and I might be throwing dry flies, but I might be throwing nymphs, and I might even throw a streamer
Mhm.
all on the same section of the river with one rod, that's the rod I would go with. If you're looking for a fast action rod with a little stiffer tip, then I'd say go with the double X. And I fish a
Okay.
lot of our double X on still water fishing, where I'm throwing bigger flies. I'm fishing out of a kick boat using sinking lines. That's a great rod for generating line speed and distance, throwing tight loops. We have the Salish, which is our newest addition, which is basically our big game rod. And this came from requests of guys, you know, in your neck of the woods, Pacific Northwest. But then we started getting a lot of feedback from guys down in Florida, the North Atlantic for the stripers and stuff like that up in there, where they wanted a big game rod that would handle the salt water.
Mhm.
So we did the Salish, and they come in 6 through 12 weights.
Okay.
And this is, if you ever feel like the Falcon isn't muscly enough for you, then the Salish might be your go-to. We put a big ball fighting butt on it. It's a beast of a stick,
Man.
but it throws a good line. I fished the 6 weight for still water, and it's a beautiful fishing rod. It's a nice rod, but it's got a little more backbone to it, you know, for fighting the fish. And that works out. You know, it's got the anodized snake guides and strippers, handles the elements of the salt a little bit better, and it's a beast of a stick. So depending on what you're looking for, you know, the only other rod we added beyond that was the nymphing rod, the NX3, 10.5 foot 3 weight, and that's primarily for your Euro nymphing techniques type of stuff.
Mhm.
But between the Falcon, which is just a good all around rod, we also have the Gorge. Now the Gorge is our entry level 4-piece rod, and we have a lot of different sizes in that. It's a little, in each one of our steps up in price is a higher modulus graphite. So the Gorge, I think the Falcon is a 37 millionths modulus. I believe the Gorge is a 42 millionths modulus, and it's a 4-piece rod, comes with the case, kind of a flat matte green color. It's a beautiful rod.
I'm looking at it. It's beautiful. Yeah.
It's really a good little rod. And I think they retail for $120 or something like that.
Yeah. I think
for a 4-piecer
130
in a case.
Yeah, 130 with
Yeah,
the
that's
case.
probably right.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I keep all these rod models. I keep looking at them on the website because I was like looking at the Salish and the Aurelius and all that. The Aurelius is a beautiful rod too. The reel seat on that thing. Oh my gosh. Yeah,
yeah, it's a little more, you know, to the guys that like pretty, you know, because we got the nickel silver reel seat on that, and the wood reel seat, and that color is just an eye catching. No, let's face it, it's about the looks. It's really, you know, it doesn't have anything to do with function or anything like that. It's just pretty. Yeah. So, you know, we're into that too.
Yeah.
So I've noticed on a lot of the rods, most of them are cork. Is that something specifically done by design? Is that so you get that more sensitive feel?
Yes. Yeah, we do that on purpose. Everything that we use a high grade cork. I'm trying to remember. I think it goes 3A, 4A. the very highest grade cork we don't use. We use the next one down.
Okay.
And that's strictly because of cost. The really high expensive stuff has no pits, but it's extremely expensive. And so ours has less pitting. But that's one of those things that depending on who you talk to, a lot of times guys will, and you'll see this maybe with the edge rod where they got a graphite handle, or I've seen rods with wood handles on them and stuff. And really the overall, by a large percentage, guys prefer the cork. And one of the advantages there is that depending on if it's a man or a woman or personal preference, if you take a cork and hopefully it's maybe got a little more body to it, you can take a little fine grit sandpaper and you can take it down and customize it to where it feels good to you. And so that's an advantage to having cork that you can't do with anything else. But I know me personally, and I don't know if it's because what I've been conditioned to use, but anytime I've tried a rod that's not cork, it throws me off. It just doesn't feel right to me. And I was looking at these edge rods because we did this show in Portland a couple of years ago.
Mhm.
We were right across the aisle from them. And I looked at the rods. They're really interesting because they had this free floating blank and that goes into this handle. And so it wasn't directly attached to the handle. Have you seen them?
Yeah.
They're really kind of funky, and I'm looking at this thing going, wow, it's a neat concept, but I couldn't wrap my head around it. But I'm feeling this thing and I'm going, I couldn't fish this. It would drive me crazy trying, I wouldn't concentrate on fishing. I'd be freaking out because of this rod. But they're beautiful, but they had such a different feel. Whereas I can pick up a regular cork rod handle and if it feels good, man, from there I can just ride it out, do everything else. But a lot of that is like I say, can be remedied with a little sandpaper to suit your own personal preference. So that's one advantage. But yeah, everything we do is with the cork, and we do that by design.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, it's interesting because when it comes to designing our rods, what we kind of do is go back and forth and saying, okay, this is a rod that we want. Same with the Salish. We looked at the Salish and we said, okay, we need a big game rod, saltwater. No small stuff, nothing smaller than a 6 through 12. And so this is all big game, big fly, kind of the stuff that you're doing, John. This is kind of what we had in mind for that. And so, how do what kind of, right, let's go with the action of the rod. We're going to be throwing big stuff. And so we want good backbone in fighting the fish. We don't want the thing so stiff all the way through it that it won't cast, because it's got to cast and it's got to be able to load with these funky flies, right? So, we came up with the taper profile that we wanted. And then, of course, it's designing the components, oversizing the stripping guides, which we did. We oversized the fighting butt on it, which we wanted because you're definitely going to be, if it's big game stuff, you're going to be laying that into your belt. And, little things like that. So having a purpose for the rod and then designing it and then saying, okay, to the engineers, this is what we got. And, we might go back and forth with a few different prototypes. They'll send them over and we'll cast them, hand them out to a few guys. And with the Salish, that was a project that got put back a couple of years, but it really gave us time to send our samples around to different guys across the country, so that we got feedback from guys from Florida. We got feedback from guys in California, Oregon. I played with them. Some guys up in the Atlantic Northeast. And so we were able to get a lot of feedback from guys saying, yeah, I like this, I didn't like this, and this, so that when we came down to the final touches on the rod, we knew what we needed to change to fit what we wanted it to do. And that's how we approach stuff. The thing that when I was at Cortland that used to drive me crazy was, there for a lot of years, none of us that was selling the stuff had any input on what we were selling. The guys back at the home office would go out And I swear they'd go into a box and say, make that green and we'll buy it. So, okay. And that was our Cortland rod, you know. And because Cortland had some good rods, and then they had some real clinkers.
Mhm.
And, you know, the clinkers I never took out of my bag. You know, it's just like, I can't sell this, you know. I tell you, I'm a lousy salesman. If it's good, I'm a great salesman. But if I have to tell somebody, yeah, this is good and it's not, he's gonna know I'm gonna lie, you know.
Right.
With Maxxon, when I hooked up with Maxxon, it's really funny because I hooked up with these guys first as an independent rep, and I was repping some other lines, and so I'd go see my dealers, and I was repping this other line of rods, more expensive, much more expensive than Maxxon. And I'd go see the dealers and I'd say, okay, hey, I got a new line of rods and reels, Maxxon, and then I've got this line of brand X, and I'd show them to my dealers, and my dealers would say, hey, Steve, which of these rods do you think I should buy? And I said, both. I said, they're two totally different price points. Buy this for the Maxxon to fit this price point, and buy brand X for this price point. And they'd look at me and they says, okay, you're my customer. You walk into my store and I'm going to show you brand X. I'm going to show you Maxxon. As my customer, which one are you going to buy? Now, you know, one thing that I learned, at least for me, is I can't lie to my dealers, because if you lie, you forget what lie you told them. And if you lie to them, your credibility with them is shot.
Mm-hmm.
And so the guy played me like a fiddle, you know, he backed me right into the corner. And I says, in all honesty, if I'm your customer and I'm going to buy one of these two rods, I'm going to buy the Maxxon. He says, that's because the Maxxon's the better rod. And I says, it is. He says, I know. And he says, if you'd have told me this other, he says, I'd have kicked you out of here. And I said, well, it's still a good rod. He says, it's not twice as good as this. I said, no, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
He says, Max is better than this, and that's twice as much. I says, I know. So, you know, after a few of these encounters or similar to that, I dropped that line. And then I started working closer with Maxxon, and they said, hey, how do you feel about getting a little more involved with the company? And I says, hey, I'd love it. And they said, okay, I'll tell you what, we'll allow you to keep your territory and pay a commission on your sales, but then we'll also pay you a very tiny small salary to do this other work for us and get involved in the product development, go to China, do all these other things, do these shows, you know, and that will cover you. I said, absolutely, because this is like I say, the first company that's ever asked me, you know, what do you want to sell? And so, you know, for a guy that's been around as long as I have to get this excited about selling something, it's because there's a little bit of me in it, you know. They didn't just give it to me and say, push it, go sell it. It's like, I know what's involved in this, and this is good. It's a good thing, and it's worthy of your efforts to go fishing, because I know you won't be disappointed with it. You know, it's good stuff, and I'm not taking you to the cleaners. It's a fair deal. And that's you know, that's almost unheard of anymore these days. So that's what makes it exciting for me. Good stuff.
Yeah. So go ahead, John.
No, I was just going to say real quick, you got to forgive me because I didn't look this up myself, but I am going to ask you anyway.
Okay.
So is that same warranty? So my Falcon has a lifetime warranty, pending intentional damage, right?
Yeah.
Is that carried throughout all of your rods? Yes. See, that is what I thought in my, you know, I have the Euro nymphing buddy that's been looking at your nymphing rods. I've got another question for that rod specific, but he was like, it's got a lifetime warranty, and I'm just really hoping I'm going to start recommending your product for price point, and after I've used it, and I have now, I can't not recommend that to people getting into it, especially here where I live. You know, of course, this is the mecca of fly fishing here in Northeast Texas.
Right,
you know, it just, I mean, everybody fly fishes.
Yeah, so,
cool. But I can't not recommend that to my like 3 buddies that are interested in fly fishing now.
Yeah, sure. That's great.
So but for your nymphing rod, have you ever considered, I'm sure y'all have, but have you ever considered adding an additional rod piece for those guys that want to go from that 10.5 to say that 11 or 11.5
Yes.
range?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We that has been suggested to us on a couple of other different rods too. And I can tell you the problem that we've had is in doing that, it creates some inconsistency in the flex of the rod, because once you lengthen that out, like say for example, the best way to explain it, back when I started fly fishing, the most popular rod was an 8.5 foot 6 weight. That was the number one. Graphite was just really coming out, making a strong showing. And the average trout rod was an 8.5 6. And then when the new graphite started to come out, they lengthened that out. And all of a sudden now the number one trout rod is a 9 foot 5. But with me starting off with the 8.5 footers, that's my favorite length for a rod for all around fishing is an 8.5 footer. I fish a lot of 8.5 4s, 8.5 5s, but we don't even make an 8.5 5 in the majority of ours. The only one we make that in is in the gorge. But if you look at a 9 foot 5 rod of the same style model and compare it to an 8.5 5, the base on that 9 foot is much bigger. Just to make that extra 6 inches in length, you have to build up from the very bottom, everything out, just like a pyramid, and then build up from there. So when you start getting down into the tip sections and you decide to make a cut from here to here and insert another piece, getting that to flow and to flex consistently, we couldn't make it feel good. And we didn't want to do it and then have people say, well, it's just a gimmick, because in that essence it would, because structurally and the feel of the rod just didn't feel right. So that we did consider that. It was, we played with that and we couldn't make it work to our satisfaction. So I think to do that, we'd have to probably come out with just a separate rod with that length.
I genuinely appreciate the honesty in that answer. That means a ton to me, on the consumer side, and as a guy curious about stuff like that, that means a ton to me that, yeah, it was thought about, but not only was it thought about, you guys didn't like it, and you weren't about to sell something that you didn't stand behind.
Yeah.
And I appreciate
well,
that.
that's how we are though too. I can tell you, a couple of years ago we were doing that Pennsylvania show in Lancaster, and it was Justin and I working the show, and we had a guy walk up and he asked us if we had an 8 foot 3 weight or some kind of rod. Back there in Pennsylvania, they have a lot of small streams, and a lot of guys are looking for really short fly rods back there, enough to where that's another project that we've got going, but it's kind of on hold, is like a small stream series of rods that are short, but up to 5 weight, that'll handle this brushy type stuff. But, he says, if you got this and this, and Justin says, no, he said, but you know what though? He says, there is a vendor here that has that rod. I saw it. And he walked him over to our competition vendor and turned him over to that guy. And he said, hey, this guy's looking for a rod that you have, and it looks pretty good. I'm not endorsing it because I don't know the rod, but I know you have it. I'll leave it up to him to decide. So, the thing with us is that, we never badmouth our competition ever, at least maybe in private. No, I'm just kidding. We really don't, because, the fly fishing industry is such a small industry, and we really are in this together. And, I'm totally aware who our competition is, and we try to compete, but we try to compete, on a quality price level, and not, by bad mouthing anything.
Right.
And if we can help somebody by pointing them in the right direction, even if it's selling one of our competitors' rods to him. If it fits him, if it helps him, because we weren't able to, we'll do it. You know, I mean, we want to make sure this guy's taken care of, because I found that, you know, you take care of the customer and you treat him good, he's going to go, wow, that guy didn't need to do that for me. That was good of him. So I'm going to consider the, you know, his stuff next time. And so, you know, it'll come back.
Mhm.
But the thing is that, you know, we don't want to BS anybody, because honestly, if you do, they're going to catch you.
Yeah.
Guys out there that are into this, fishermen, and you don't need to be fishing for 20 years to figure this out. You can, if you fished for a year, you can tell the difference between rods. And if you try to BS them, they're going to know you're BSing them, and then you lose your credibility, and
Mhm.
and then they won't give you a second look. So, you know, we respect that, and we try to do what we can to help. And we're all, you know, the nice thing about us is we're small enough to where if you tell Justin, me, or Brian, hey, you know, here's a suggestion for you guys, it's going to get brought up. And, you know, it may go somewhere, it may not. But, you know, there's a lot of things that we've looked at and we've considered. And, you know, that's how you grow.
Mhm.
You know, that's how you get better, is by listening. You know, we have a little rod that's called a Versa. It's a 7.5-foot fly spin combination. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's got spinning rod guides on it, but the handle reverses.
Yep.
So you can put a fly reel or a spinning reel on it.
That is cool.
And I've fished it both ways. And to be honest with you, it's nothing new. It isn't an original design. Eagle Claws had the old Trail Master
Mhm.
rod out there for 60 years probably, and they do the same thing, but ours is built out of graphite. It actually throws a pretty good
This is
fly
cool.
line, and it works out great for you know, high mountain fishing on monofilament. But a few years ago, we were at the ICAST show, and this is a true story that cracks me up.
This
But it
is a
was like,
cool
you know,
rod.
the end of the show is like the last day of the show, and it was getting down late. And so, you know, you have to wait for them to bring your pallets out so you can tear your booth down. So we're killing time. And our rep from Canada, his name's Dan McCrimmon. Dan's a great caster. Man, he's a good caster. He's a great fisherman, really a cool guy. And I said, hey, let's put a fly line on that Versa and take it over to the casting pond. Now that's blasphemy, stepping up to the IFTD casting pond with this fly spin combination, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, we're up there playing with this thing, and Dan's got it, and he's doing a lot of these little spay casts with it, just goofing off. But he's putting this line way out there. I mean, I'm talking a long ways. And this guy comes walking up, and that's the year that Sage won the best of show with their Sage 1 or something like that. I can't remember. And this typical fly shop dude with the shorts and flip flops, a plaid shirt, ponytail, and a hat comes up, and he says, and he's casting this Sage, and he looks over to Dan and he goes, "What kind of piece of shit is that you're casting?" And Dan, in his Canadian accent, says, "Oh, this is the kind of piece of shit that's putting out 20 feet further than you."
Yeah.
The guy looks at Dan and he says, "Touche." True story.
I love it.
I cracked up.
This is
laughing.
awesome.
I thought I wish I'd have given anything to have that on
Oh,
tape or something.
that
Video.
could have been like the ultimate testimonial to that rod. So that
Oh, that's just, you know, and he was so quick, you know, because he's out there doing, and they're casting next to each other.
Yeah.
What kind of piece of shit is that? The kind of piece of shit is putting out 20 feet further than you. And he's throwing the Sage 1.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
that's funny.
you cannot go wrong with that.
That's a true story.
That right there.
Yeah, you know, and it's just, it serves a purpose, you know, for a guy that, you know, wants to go camping or wants to leave a rod in his car or something. It's not expensive. It's under $100 for the rod, and you know, you put 2 reels with it, you got some versatility there. You know.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, you,
probably not the world's greatest spinning and it's not the world's greatest fly, but it'll work for both and kind of fill in, a big chunk of that area. So,
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
it
Well,
does the
I
job.
pulled it up
Yeah.
again, just to look at it, and then I started looking at the configurations with it and everything else, and that it's just really cool to take a look at. So this might be a rod that I got to buy anyways, just because, and put a little ultralight
You'll
reel on
love
it.
it. It's
Oh yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's a
just
it's a great little rod. That's a good rod for your kids.
oh yeah,
I take it out. We go fishing, and a lot of times we'll stop and hit a lake and throw a flying bubble or something,
no,
just
this
for
is
something
awesome.
different. And it's fun.
So
It's fun. It's fun to do it.
so future things coming up for Max, and we'll wrap up here in a few, but what do you guys got on the radar? I watched your YouTube, and I watched Justin tear the reels apart and put them back together and show how to like reverse the drags and
Yeah,
stuff, but I also saw rafts
sure.
on there. And so are you
Right.
guys producing rafts now through Maxxon?
It's not through Maxxon Outfitters. It's when I mentioned our owner doing OEM and inflatables. That's how
Mhm.
he got started. He started inflatables,
Okay.
and a couple of years ago, more than a couple of years ago, it's probably been about 5 years ago. We thought that we would take, because when I say does the rafts, he does a lot of these big whitewater rafts.
Mhm.
These 7-man big things. They make these big pontoons that'll ferry vehicles across and stuff. I
Wow.
mean, he's done some big stuff. And being a stillwater fly fisherman in Utah, we do a lot of kick boating
Yep.
type of stuff. So, they came up with a couple of inflatable boats for fly fishermen, and one of them is the XPW 239, which is the raft style. So it looks similar to the Watermaster
Mhm.
design. And then we came up with this other one, which was a flat, the XPW 240, which is a 6-inch inflatable drop stitch PVC that I fish out of still. I put a little 30-pound electric motor on it,
Mhm.
and covers a lot of water. And we gave that a shot, and it's one of those things that just didn't really work for us. And I think the reason was price point.
Mhm.
We tried to go through our dealers for sales, and I think it kicked the price up to a point that was a little tougher to swallow. So the dealers weren't moving them. So we said, well, we'll just sell them through our website and clean them up. So we dropped the price down to what the dealer cost was, just to, get rid of them.
Mhm.
And then they started selling like hotcakes, and then we sold out of them. And so we've had enough demand to keep ordering a few. I think just the round style. The flat one, I don't think is going to go, but we're kind of still looking at it because it really doesn't fit in with the Maxxon Outfitters. So right now they're being sold under another company under the umbrella called Maxxon Inflatables,
Okay.
and it's a separate deal than the same owner,
Okay.
but Justin and I aren't involved in that. So,
Okay.
and I'm really not sure what they're going to do with it, to be honest with you. So,
Yeah, I
but yeah,
saw him. Yeah.
we got them.
Yeah, I saw him, and I was just curious about that because there was nothing on the website, so I didn't know. I probably should have researched a little bit further just to get a better idea. But I thought, well, we're going to talk to you anyway, so.
Yeah. Well,
But
check under Maxxon Inflatables,
okay,
because that's a separate website. And then there, you're probably going to be dealing more with uh,
okay,
Brian Vague up there, because Brian's kind of in charge of the boats. And I think for the most part, that all that business up there is more OEM.
okay,
Customers will call in, and we're making it under their brand or their name for them,
okay,
as opposed to marketing it ourselves. Yeah.
okay. And then fly gear. You guys got anything new on the horizon that you're ready to talk about yet, or anything new products coming out?
You know, we've got a lot on the drawing board. We had a number of things. I mentioned the big game reel. We've got a new fly line with a new taper. It's actually a taper that I designed a while back. That is really it's tried and proven. It's just getting it made has been the difficult thing. Our fly lines are being manufactured out of Northern Sports in Canada. They're a Teflon coated line, and they've had some major setbacks. This COVID thing has screwed up manufacturing so badly everywhere because it just shut things down. And then trying to get that up and going, caught up and get going again. We were hoping to have it out by now, but I couldn't. I just don't know when it'll happen because we're ready to go and our work is done on our end, but it's up to the guys making it for us that are the holdup. So we do have that in the works. As of right now, I don't think we've got any new rods. We just came out with the Salish and the NX3, so nothing happening there. We got the big reel coming out. We've looked at other things too, trying to come up with, like when we had the boats, we were trying to come up with some nets that would work with our inflatables. But that didn't happen. It's hard to compete with what's already out there that we couldn't beat on price. So, we're always looking. Any suggestions are always welcome.
Cool.
So if you have something, hit me with it.
Wheels are always turning for John and I, so
Yeah, hey, you come up with an idea, say, run it past me. Say, hey, what do you think of this? I'll send it up the flagpole. We'll give it some thought and see what. Because like for us, it's really got to make sense with what we're doing, and this all goes back to is it good quality? Because it's got to be good quality. It's got to be a good bang for the buck, and it's got to appeal to not the huge masses, but our customers. And our customer. You asked once earlier, who our customer is. Our customer is not the fly fisherman that is geared up in the Orvis gear with the most expensive thing, driving the Range Rover. All of us at Maxxon drive Toyotas. We don't have the fancy rod lockers on our cars. We're just, I've been fly fishing a long time, but I don't like that snobby attitude.
Absolutely.
I'm not a rich guy. And I don't go out there and try to present myself like I'm, very successful in life and I've got all this expensive equipment, but I don't know how to use it. I know how to use it, and it's not very expensive equipment, because I fish what we do. I've got some of that stuff that I've acquired over the last 40 years, but a lot of it's salesman samples, that I had to buy. But I mean, I fish Maxxon Outfitters gear, and I do that. First reason was so I could have experience with it, so I knew how it felt, how it performed, pros, cons, whatever. But then I keep using it, not because I'm worried about someone seeing me out there going, "Oh, you work for Maxxon, and you're not fishing a Maxxon rod." That's not it. I fish it because I like it. It's good. It feels good to me. My casting is good with it. My accuracy is good with it. It feels good with a fish. If I break it, it's no big deal because I can have a replacement in a matter of days. And that's the thing that we do too that's different from anyone else. You break a rod, any rod, you take it into your shop and you say, "I've got a broken rod." They say, "Oh, you got to send it back to the factory." You have to send it back. They have it for a couple of months. They send you a price tag for a repair that's half the price of the rod. And what we do is you call us up, you say, "Hey, I broke my Falcon 9'10" weight on this alligator gar. And how did it break? You know, I kind of high arced it, short arced it, you know, trying to land a fish. Okay, so what's your address? What's your name? Okay, you know, send me $7, $8 for shipping, and they'll turn around, they'll send you the rod or the replacement. Because, you know, what we found is that the postal service and UPS is making a lot of money sending the rod back and charging for it. You know, we're not gonna, we usually just charge for the shipping, you know, and send you a new piece and do it without requiring you to send your old rod back, because that's just more time in the postal system or the shipping system.
Right.
You know, we want you back on the water as fast as we can. Usually, you know, it's within 3 to 4 days. So you're back on the water, you know, in a couple of days with your new rod or replacement.
Super cool.
So, you know, yeah, that none of that other stuff. That's so annoying to me, you know, to send your rod back in. You know, our manufacturing is so tight. We, you know, and it's changed over the years. It had to be, I remember at Cortland, there was a guy back there that would try tips on this section. Oh, that's too tight, that's too loose. Our stuff is so precise. If it's a 9'5" tip section, it's going to fit first time, because it's just in the manufacturing. You know, that stuff is not cut with a knife like the old days. It's cut with a laser.
Yeah.
So every one is exactly the same, and it's made a huge difference in that regard. So, you know, that's what we do.
So, well, John, do you have any other questions for Steve at all?
No, not really. I mean, Steve, I think you've answered everything that I could have really asked myself. I guess my one last thing is there a possibility for a rod case in the future for the Falcons, with them being a 2-piece rod?
We have a case right now.
See,
Yeah,
I got to get one.
it's in the catalog. I think it's a 56-inch rod case for a 2-piece rod, and I think they run $45, I think, for the case.
So you're about to have one ordered. So
yeah, just go online and order that baby. Yeah, because I have to now. I think it's in stock. I'm not
no,
exactly
you guys
sure.
are out of stock right
I think
now.
it is. Are we?
Yeah, you're out of stock on that one.
A few things right now, and then
yeah,
I was gonna say, because we've got some stuff coming, but you know, I don't know if you guys have heard, but you know, logistic issues of getting stuff has been bad for everybody, and you know, getting the stuff across the big pond is one thing, and then having it sit while it gets unloaded and transferred. It's been a mess.
Yeah.
So we'll have it soon.
Well, Steve, I wanted to say thank you so much for coming on and spending this, you know, really good, genuine time with us, telling us about, you know, not only your experience, but really, you know, this isn't so much of one of those things like, hey, come buy our products. You actually stand behind your product, and everybody does there. And it's so nice to see that, but also the recognition of that you guys are making these products for everybody, so that it's fully accessible, so that we can continue to have a lot of different people really get involved in the sport of fly fishing, and it's enjoyable, and it doesn't have to be for, like you were saying, the Land Rover drivers with the rod lockers, and you know the you know the rod hood mount things, you know, driving down the road, and you know
I just pissed off a lot of people there.
No, don't worry, we do that too.
Oh,
we do that.
We do that all the time.
In the words of our friend Jason from England, we take the piss to him, so you know we don't have any problem doing that at all. No, and it's just so nice though to have a manufacturer conscientious of, we want to make quality products for our customer, and we don't need to, you know, twist their arm behind their back and, you know, hold them, you know, at you know, the point of a pen to make that money. It's just so
Yeah.
it's refreshing and it's nice, and it's also opening this up for families too, where in some circumstances, yeah, you roll into a fly shop and a family sees the first rod and it's $500, and it's like, well, dad can get a rod, but little Billy or little Susie can't, because
Right.
I can only afford $500. Where you talk about a $200 combo, if that family is interested in getting into it, the kid can get a rod, and then you can find some reasonable waders to get started and everything else, and you're not
Right.
looking at sinking a ton of money into that. And you
Right.
really well said that in the beginning of, like, you got your rod, you got your waders, you got line, you got tippet, flies, fly cases. I mean, there's so much stuff that really goes into it. And so it's just so cool that you guys do this. I just love your company for that fact.
Thank you.
Not only the quality of product, but just the customer support, and like I said, even your willingness and your how fast you get back to people and everything else. It's just unheard of. We've been trying to get a hold of other manufacturers to come on that make affordable products, and it's been just like pulling teeth to get a representative from that company to come on and talk to us. So you were like right on it. That just speaks volumes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we appreciate the opportunity, and like I say, we don't have a huge advertising budget, so we rely on word of mouth, and this is a great way for us to get the word out about us out there, and we appreciate the opportunity to do that, and we're easy to easy access. I mean, you can call Justin or me or Brian. If you talk to anyone at Maxxon, it's probably one of us, unless one of the reps out in the field. And we're going to do everything we can to take care of our customers, because we want you back for your second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth rod. We want a customer, and we want to keep them for life. That's our goal.
Absolutely. So just for our listeners out there, so you can go to the Maxxon website if you want to talk to Steve or Justin or Brian or any one of these guys. You go to maxxonoutfitters.com. They're on Instagram under Maxxon Outfitters. They are also on Facebook under Maxxon Outfitters, Twitter, Maxxon Outfitters, and YouTube. They also have Maxxon Outfitters, where they have some fantastic videos on how to work on the reels, how to reverse the drag on them. So if you're left hand or right hand, these guys are just fantastic folks. And myself personally, I can't say enough. I know John, I mean, he's out there. He beat up on a gar pretty good yesterday on one of their rods. So unfortunately,
we're gonna see that state record.
We are
see it.
I know it. I know that it's going to happen, but
yeah, for sure.
So Steve, thanks again. Really appreciate it. And
you bet. Thank you, guys.
Definitely. So that's all we got today on this episode of Working Class Fishing. Remember, you can find us on Instagram at Working Class Fishing, YouTube, Working Class Fishing. And if you have any more guest suggestions or questions, especially ones if you want to get a hold of any of our guests like Steve, you can send them over via Gmail to workingclassfish@gmail.com. Until next time, y'all get out there, get some good fishing in.
Y'all take care.
Thanks, guys.